The fundamental reason you remain financially stagnant, despite your conscious desire for wealth, is that your primitive brain does not view abundance as a reward, but as a mortal threat to your survival, triggering a deep-seated biological alarm system designed to keep you small, safe, and integrated within the herd. You must understand that the human operating system evolved in a Paleolithic environment where resources were scarce, and the survival of the individual was entirely dependent on their acceptance by the tribe. In that world, any deviation from the norm, any accumulation of excess resources, or any elevation in status above the tribal chieftains was a death sentence that led to envy, ostracization, or execution. Therefore, your subconscious mind, which controls 95% of your decisions, has a hard-coded directive: do not rise above the tribe. When you start to make progress, when you land the big client, or when your investment doubles, your amygdala, the lizard brain responsible for fear processing, hijacks your nervous system. It floods you with cortisol and anxiety, interpreting this positive change as a dangerous step into the unknown. The soft men interpret this anxiety as intuition, telling them to stop, or they manifest sudden bouts of imposter syndrome. But the architect recognizes this as a homeostatic response. Just as your body sweats to cool you down if you get too hot, your subconscious generates self-sabotage to cool your finances down if you get too rich, effectively forcing you back into the poverty temperature where you feel safe, familiar, and invisible. This mechanism explains the baffling phenomenon of the upper limit problem, where a man achieves a level of success that exceeds his internal thermostat and immediately destroys it through irrational behavior. You see this in lottery winners who go bankrupt within 3 years, or the entrepreneur who builds $1 million business and then subconsciously burns it to the ground with a scandal, a bad lawsuit, or a nervous breakdown. The brain is desperate to return to its baseline. If your baseline identity is struggling but honest worker, your brain will tolerate a bank account of $5,000. If that account hits $50,000, your subconscious screams, "Error! Error! This does not match our identity," and it will compel you to find a way to lose that money by buying a car you don't need, picking a fight with your business partner, or getting sick so that you can return to the comfortable misery of the $5,000 balance. The soft men think they are victims of bad luck. The architect knows they are victims of their own cybernetic programming. You are not fighting the economy. You are fighting millions of years of evolutionary conditioning that equates safety with mediocrity. The brain prioritizes predictability over prosperity. Poverty is painful, but it is predictable. You know how to survive it. Wealth is a new chaotic map that requires you to become a different person, and the ego views this transformation as a form of death. To the subconscious, staying poor is a survival strategy because it keeps you camouflaged among the masses, safe from the tall poppy syndrome, and secure in the knowledge that you will not be abandoned by your peers for becoming one of them. Furthermore, this fear is compounded by the script of sacrifice instilled in you by a society that fetishizes struggle. From birth, you are bombarded with the narrative that money is the root of all evil, that rich people are greedy predators, and that there is a nobility in suffering. These viral memes infect your limbic system, creating a moral conflict whenever you approach a financial breakthrough. If you deeply believe that wealth is evil, and you also believe that you are a good person, your brain cannot allow you to become wealthy because that would mean you are becoming evil. This cognitive dissonance acts as a parking brake on your ambition. You might drive with your foot on the gas, conscious effort, but the parking brake, subconscious guilt, is pulled up tight, creating friction, heat, and eventually engine failure. You will procrastinate on the most important tasks. You will forget to follow up on leads, and you will undersell your services, all to maintain your moral purity in the eyes of a judgmental society. The soft man apologizes for his ambition. He hides his wins to avoid offending the losers. The architect understands that money is morally neutral energy. It simply amplifies who you already are. If you are a tyrant, money makes you a monster. If you are a builder, money makes you a benefactor. To break the fear, you must rewrite the moral code of your internal operating system. You must convince your lizard brain that poverty is the selfish act because it limits your ability to help anyone, while wealth is the heroic act because it gives you the resources to protect your tribe. You must desensitize yourself to the fear of exile and accept that becoming the architect means leaving the cave, even if the others refuse to follow. The process of wealth acquisition is not a financial journey, but an ontological surgery, forcing you to accept the brutal metaphysical truth that the person you are right now is mathematically incapable of holding the wealth you desire, meaning that to become the millionaire, you must first execute the poor self that currently inhabits your body. You are operating under the delusion that you can simply simply add money to your existing life without fundamentally altering your character, your relationships, and your self-perception. But this is impossible because your current identity is constructed around the constraints of scarcity, and if you pour high-voltage abundance into a low-voltage nervous system, you will blow the fuse. The soft men cling to their identity like a security blanket, saying, "I want to be rich, but I want to stay humble. I want to stay the same guy from the neighborhood," not realizing that this nostalgia is the anchor drowning them. The guy from the neighborhood has a financial thermostat set to survival mode. He tolerates bad service. He accepts waiting in line. He bonds with his friends over complaints about the economy, and he views money as a limited resource to be hoarded. To transcend this, you must undergo a voluntary ego death. You must be willing to mourn the loss of your former self. You must look in the mirror and realize that the beliefs, habits, and even the posture of the man staring back at you are the very things keeping the bank account empty. The architect understands that wealth is not something you get, it is something you attune to. You do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. Therefore, the primary work is not checking the stock market, but aggressively recalibrating your internal reality to render poverty a physiological impossibility. This recalibration requires a ruthless campaign of somatic exposure therapy. Your brain fears big money because it is alien to your sensory experience. You have no neural pathways for luxury, for ease, or for power. So when you encounter them, your system rejects them as a threat. You must desensitize your nervous system to wealth by physically placing your biological chassis in environments of extreme abundance until the awe turns into normality. The soft man walks past the five-star hotel and feels he doesn't belong. He looks at the supercar and feels a pang of envy mixed with intimidation. The architect walks into the hotel lobby, sits in the chair, orders a coffee, and absorbs the frequency of the room. He goes to the dealership and test drives the car, feeling the leather, smelling the engine, normalizing the sensation of power. You are hacking your reticular activating system, RAS, by exposing yourself to the scent of money, the quiet, the space, the quality of materials, the deference of service. You are teaching your subconscious that this is safe. This is me. This is where I belong. You are moving the baseline. You stop feeling guilty for quality and start feeling allergic to mediocrity. This is not fake it till you make it, which is a lie based on deception. This is faith it till you make it, a protocol based on acclimatization. You cannot build a castle if your nervous system is only comfortable in a tent. You must stretch the container of your psyche so that when the money pours in, it does not spill over. The most painful part of this identity shift is the social guillotine. As you kill the poor self, you will inevitably alienate the people who fell in love with that version of you. Your friends, your family, and your old peers bond with you through trauma bonding, shared struggles, shared complaints, and a shared proximity to the bottom. When you start to vibrate at a higher frequency, when you stop complaining and start solving, when you stop drinking cheap beer and start discussing asset allocation, you become a living mirror that reflects their stagnation back at them. They will attack you. They will say, "You've changed," saying it like an accusation, to which the architect replies, "Yes, that was the point." You must be prepared to walk through the valley of isolation. The subconscious fear of big money is largely the fear of loneliness. Your tribal brain screams, "If I get rich, I will lose my friends." And the architect answers, "Yes, you will lose the friends who require you to be small to feel comfortable." This is the price of entry. You are trading a crowded room of victims for a sparse room of victors. You must be willing to be misunderstood, judged, and called arrogant by people who confuse confidence with hubris because they have never seen a man who trusts himself. You are rewriting the script of your lineage. You are the genetic mutation that breaks the cycle of poverty. To do this, you must be ruthless with your own ego. You must stop identifying as a struggling entrepreneur or a hard-working employee and start identifying as a capital allocator in training. The transition is messy. You will feel like an imposter. Good. Imposter syndrome is simply the sensation of your self-image stretching to accommodate a new reality. If you don't feel like a fraud, you aren't growing. You must kill the peasant in your mind so the king can sit on the throne. The final and most maddening lock on the vault of ultimate wealth is the paradox of detachment, a counterintuitive law of the universe which dictates that money relentlessly flees from those who need it most and magnetically gravitates toward those who treat it with indifference. You must master the energetic physics of neediness, which is not merely an emotion but a palpable biological broadcast, a psychic stench of desperation that repels capital, clients, and opportunities with the force of a magnetic field. When you chase money, when you operate from a place of scarcity, you are signaling to the marketplace that you are empty, that you are a resource drain, and that you are seeking extraction rather than contribution. The soft men are perpetually trapped in the vibration of I must have, creating a frantic, grasping energy, terrifies investors and disgusts partners because human beings are evolutionarily hardwired to avoid the desperate man. The desperate man is dangerous, unpredictable, and likely to drag the tribe down. The architect understands that to capture the prize, you must stop chasing the prize. You must cultivate a state of outcome independence, a terrifyingly powerful psychological stance where you perform the work with savage intensity and absolute excellence, yet you remain completely emotionally detached from the immediate result. This is the difference between the beggar and the king. The beggar asks because he needs to survive. The king offers because he overflows with value. The market does not reward your need. It rewards your competence, and you cannot be fully competent when your amygdala is screaming about paying the rent. This paradox explains why the rich get richer and the poor stay poor. It is not just compound interest, it is compound confidence. The wealthy man enters a negotiation with the walkaway power. He does not need the deal. He has options. He has reserves. This lack of pressure allows him to think clearly, to hold his frame, and to demand terms that the desperate man would never dare to ask for. The soft man enters the room sweating. His rent is due. His ego is fragile, and he needs the sale to validate his existence. The client smells this fear instantly. It manifests in the micro tremors of his voice, the rush of his pitch, and his willingness to compromise too early. By needing the money, he devalues his own product. He signals that he is low status. The architect flips the script. You must trick your brain into a state of pre-abundance. You must convince your visceral nervous system that you are already safe, already fed, and already victorious, so that when you ask for the money, it comes out not as a plea, but as a command or an invitation to play at your level. This is why fuck you money is so potent, not because of what it buys, but because of the vibe it creates. It allows you to look a billionaire in the eye and speak the truth because you do not fear his rejection. But you cannot wait until you have the millions to develop the attitude. You must adopt the attitude to get the millions. You must walk into the meeting with the internal monologue. I do not need you. You need me. If we do business, we both win. If we don't, I win anyway. Furthermore, you must understand that money acts like a jealous lover. If you cling to it too tightly, if you suffocate it with your anxiety and hoarding, it will die in your hands. This is the stagnation of flow. The soft men operate with a clenched fist mentality. They grab every dollar and refuse to let go, terrified of loss. But money is a currency. It must flow to generate power. When you operate from fear, you stop investing in yourself, you stop taking risks, and you stop marketing. You play not to lose instead of playing to win. The architect operates with an open hand. He respects money, but he does not worship it. He understands that he is the generator of the wealth, not the hoarder of it. If you lose money, you can make more because you are the asset. This detachment allows you to make cold, rational decisions. When you are attached to the money, you hold on to losing investments too long, sunk cost fallacy, because you can't bear the pain of the loss. When you are detached, you cut the loss instantly and pivot, because your identity is not tied to the number on the screen. You must reach a point where a $10,000 loss or a $10,000 gain does not alter your heart rate. You are the casino, not the gambler. The gambler screams at the dice. The casino watches the math play out over the long run. The spiritual or psychological reality is that you cannot possess what you are afraid to lose. If the thought of losing your wealth causes you a panic attack, you do not own the money. The money owns you. This ownership by the object creates a frequency of fragility. You become defensive. You stop innovating. You build walls instead of bridges. The architect practices negative visualization, premeditatio malorum. You look into the abyss. You imagine losing it all. You imagine the bankruptcy. And you realize, I would still be me. I would still have my skills. I would still have my fire. I would build it back in half the time. Once you accept the worst-case scenario, you strip it of its power. You become fearless. And a fearless man is a magnet for capital. The world is desperate for leadership, and leadership is simply the absence of fear. When you detach from the money, you become the leader in the relationship. You become the flame, and money becomes the moth. The soft men spend their lives chasing the butterfly with a net, exhausted and empty-handed. The architect builds a beautiful garden and sits quietly. The butterfly comes to him. This is not magic. It is the mechanics of high-status behavior. You must stop wanting it so bad that you repel it. You must embrace the zen of capitalism. Intense action, zero attachment. You play the game for the love of the game, for the mastery of the craft, and the points, money, naturally appear on the scoreboard. If you stare at the scoreboard, you miss the ball. Keep your eye on the ball, value creation, and the score takes care of itself.